Glass by Rachel Glass. I'm contemplating the chances of being killed by a bird when pigeon collides with my window, leaving the outline of a ghost. I tell my nephew, pigeon is now flying in God's aviary, squabbling with the blackbird I killed 3 years ago. I'm sure blackbird still gives his opinion. But there are still birds and there are still windows, and glass stops the world from coming in. I stick flamingo pink cotton candy to my window to soften the blow, and I hire a hawk to stand guard. I'm sorry to scare you, but at least you're still alive. In the kitchen, a butterfly tries to find her way out. I open the window, but she still flies into glass. And I just think that's so beautiful. I think it's so beautiful. First read, whoa, it blows me away a little bit. Yeah, I'm so curious about, I guess, the speaker of this poem. To me, she seems very, very complicated, and I guess I'll go into that a little bit. Like the first line is contemplating. Also, I just like the word contemplating. It's such a mouthful, but I enjoy reading it. I feel like a lot of people would totally disagree with me, but whatever. But they're contemplating the chances of being killed by a bird, but the rest of the poem is like, I'm killing birds. And I think that they hate themselves for it, actually. And they're kind of funny. So they killed this blackbird 3 years ago, and they killed this pigeon right now in this present moment. And then they're telling their nephew that the blackbird is basically talking shit about them, which I think is so funny. Like it's such a funny way of being like, this animal and I have beef together, you know, and I killed him. I think it's so smart and so interesting. And I don't know if this is anything that you guys picked up on, but the thing that is killing them is glass. And well, obviously, I'm sure you picked up on that. But also, the writer's name is Glass. And I don't know if that is like such a far jump, but I think it has to be connected a little bit, because glass is like, in the poem, it operates as like the stopper of the outside world and the inside world, like this, where this person lives. And glass is stopping it. And this person is like, you can open a window, but still something is stopping from this thing coming in, like these birds, but like a bird can be anything, if it's a metaphor. So I'm just so fascinated by the speaker of the poem. I think they're really complicated and they kind of hate themselves. And they're the ones who's stopping it all the time. It's glass. And maybe it's the writer themselves, but we're not allowed to say that because it's the speaker of the poem. But I just think this poem's so beautiful.
Not the most important thing to say about the poem, but it's something that struck me just as I was looking at it as you're reading it, because it almost, there's a redundancy in like the flamingo pink cotton candy stuck outside the window, but then like flamingo is another bird. So I kind of appreciated it, just kind of like out of context, like another bird entering the window pane.
Yeah, they're all birds, but then it ends on a butterfly, which is so interesting, I think. And I don't really know how I feel about like the difference in that. It also has wings, but it's an insect. And it's already inside. So maybe something with the fact that it's already inside, like, I don't know, you'd have to, I think, like deeply read into that. And the speaker does finally open the window, but the butterfly ends up hitting glass anyway. So it's like, maybe because this butterfly is inside, now they're just stuck and they can't get on the other side, and glass, or the subject of the poem, is like still not allowing this like freedom of things to move between them. It's almost like the speaker feels closed off to me.
Yeah, I would say based on the cleverness of the poem, I I can't say anything 100%, but I'd be very confident saying 99.9% sure the last name is a very upfront allusion and is woven into the poem so that the self-awareness is baked in. And I know, again, I can't be 100%, but I'd be pretty confident. One way I try to read the poem is sometimes I go physical. I try to think about the physics of the poem. You can't really stick cotton candy to a window. Like, do you tape it? Because if you tape it, it's going to be, and then you're going to, the reduction in airspeed will not be appropriate to save the bird's life. And at that point, I said, okay, we're probably in a surreal world because she hired a hawk. So if we're in a universe where one hires a hawk to do guard duty. So when I got to the last stanza, the glass has been the thing that's blocking everything out. But we start with the fear of getting killed by the bird in the first place. And then the fact the butterfly, I imagine the butterfly is kind of a goofy little, this way, that way. And he keeps hitting the window over and over. This giant open space right here, a portal that you could go to get to another world, and then bouncing into the same glass over and over again. And this was by far and away my favorite of the three. This was a clear front runner because I felt playfulness as well as the philosophical insight. And I'm a sucker for that.
Yeah, I kind of felt this like contrast and like that playfulness and this like imagined reality almost, where like it is possible to hire a hawk and like communicate with birds and these things. But then there's also this level of just like repetitive exasperation almost, it's like no matter what, like there are still birds, there are still windows, like the glass stops everything. And kind of adding in that layer of like the self-awareness is interesting too. I don't know, like I really enjoyed this one also.
Totally. It's like there are going to be more birds, there are going to be more things, and the glass is still going to be here. It's like ridiculously self-aware. Yeah, excellent.
Anybody have a picture of how old the narrator is supposed to be in the context of the scenario? Because initially I was thinking they're both pretty young, and I was imagining a younger brother, but then she says nephew, so younger brother, implying that she might be older, wiser, and I didn't get self-loathing as much as just kind of some guilt, some sadness, and maybe some kind of wisdom of being an aunt rather than being an older sister.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I almost wish also we like got the nephew back again. Like I wonder in this poem, to me when I read it, I'm like, I am happy to read more of like this subject. Like does this subject with glass operate in other poems and does the nephew reappear? Like I would be so curious to hear from Rachel herself about that. I have no idea how old the subject could be. I think I read it as a nice old young like self-deprecating 20-some-year-old, but also it could definitely be like someone in her 60s just being like, fuck this. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on a podcast.
I think you're in the clear.
Okay. Just like, have you guys seen the Sopranos, the grandmother? Part of me is like, maybe that is the speaker of this poem, and she's just so closed off. Tony's mom. Anyway, yeah, maybe I don't know. How old did you think she was? How did you all read her?
I didn't think of it. I just kind of in my head, just the implication was my age, somebody roughly my age, and I'm getting a different reading of this now, listening to everybody talk about it, because maybe I got caught up a little bit too much on just the simplicity of the like the scene and just the inside outside dynamic and what's outside trying to get inside and what's inside trying to get outside. I didn't really connect the narrator's like inner psychology to it. So that's, I mean, that's interesting to me once you do that, and I think that's a good thing to do when you read this poem. Yeah.
And you get recurring good intentions, guilt about killing the blackbird. Now that I'm reading, I killed the blackbird 3 years ago, I'm doing it in like the Sopranos accent. Yeah, that's when I killed the bird. So I'm gonna have to revisit the poem with the 60-year-old version of mine.
Yeah.
But then I'm sorry to scare you, an apology, the kind of fruitlessness of taping cotton candy. I mean, why not use some nice, healthy foam that is also transparent? So there's kind of a sweetness that came through for me that had to do with these good intentions. The last two lines are a good intention. I open the window and the butterfly just flew into the glass anyway.
Yeah, there is the sweetness is a good word to add in there, because yeah, I think that's part of the appeal. I think the narrator's got to be young enough to have figuring out to do still, and maybe, I guess not to say old people can't still have things to figure out also, but it made me think that there's there's something there that is still at stake in the narrator's inner life. Yeah,
I would vote for, I definitely want to hear back from the nephew. I would like to see a side version, a parallel take. And I would like a little monologue from the blackbird too. I'm sure the blackbird gives his opinion, and I was expecting a stanza of the blackbird's opinion.
Wow, that is so, like, you could make a little chat book of the things that are operating in this poem, I think. Like, truly, there's so much that can be pulled out from it. I would love a blackbird monologue. Wow, so funny.
He's the first victim in all of this. What does he have to say?
Yeah, that's so fun.
If Rachel doesn't want to do it, I think 4 of us might be up for the task.
Yeah, we could feel a little bit.
Yeah, so that's
tiny point, but the fact that she uses the bird names as proper names, immediately that takes you to slightly more innocent kind of Winnie the Pooh world. It's not a pigeon, it's pigeon, that's his name. And so yeah, that makes me picture Blackbird more specifically as a little animated character, or a character with his own agency.
Right. It's also just, I forget who called it like satirical a little bit. Like it has that element, but that's exactly what that does as well. Like it makes them full-fledged characters, which I think is so nice.
Nephew doesn't get a capital N, by the way.
No way. We don't even get his name.
It's a nephew.
I tell nephew. That would be good. I tell nephew, pigeon is flying in God's aviary.
They all have names besides nephew, because pigeon is pigeon.
Well, the hawk is just a guard. He's an anonymous hawk. He's not. I hired hawk to stand guard, so he gets a little short shrift as well.
It's like just the ones that died, so it's like it's like these characters that like exist in this like imagined afterlife after this has happened, and like but the ones that the speaker has or feels that they have killed, or they get like this almost like level of respect, which I feel like is like kind of like that good intention thing kind of coming back into play there.
Yeah, not to be speciesist, but they get personhood.
Right. Hawk is just being used to soften their blow, or like anybody else's blow. He's just that totally. It's like they feel bad about it. Let me hire a new guy. It's just Hawk though. He's not gonna kill you. He's just you're still gonna get hurt by me, but you won't die.
It's always interesting to see the poems that get selected and how they align with each other in different ways. So yeah, I think, well, they usually do in one way or another, so this was no different. I guess, Chris, you didn't give your introduction, just in case.
A closing ceremony.
We have one new listener, and then maybe we'll close on, I have one more thought to add, but yeah, if there's any new listeners out there, Chris, you can give your introduction.
Right, I'm Chris. I teach English at the local college by day to get health insurance. I dabble in music and writing by night. I've got a giant, let's call it a fermenting pile of novel in the corner. It's not rotting, it's fermenting. And I'm glad that we're not doing this by video. I think as such, this will go out without any video because my face says sweaty Tennessee Williams poem, but my pastels say weekend at Bernie's theme party. And if that juxtaposition doesn't sum me up in a nutshell, I don't know what does.